Right. So thanks for giving me your attention to talk about some ideas. Cancer can be beaten. This is definitely a sure thing. And so I want to talk about some ideas to make it doable and how to get some quick reaction, show some results really quickly. God is alive and well and wants to be part of our healing, is the author of all healing and the author of all life and the laws of life. And because we have offended these laws or these rules that bring on complete health in one way or another, we have suffered the consequences. But I want to show you some real tricks to the trade, and so that's going to give you some hope. Definitely you're going to want to hear this. I promise you that. And I'm going to bring it down to one idea, 2 words. It makes the program a little more simpler. I did have to get a pillow for my butt, as I have lost some weight because of fasting, and I like this idea of fasting. But when you're thin, it's not as easy to do. There's a lot of information about fasting and intermittent fasting and timely eating. Well, what if a person's really thin already? What do you do? So I can talk about that too. Because here, I'm not the perfect example. I can't say that I'm arrived. I can say that I'm learning too, and by teaching you learn, because I'm digging this information up. Videos, doctors, science reports. I watch a video on usually double speed and like a sponge to reiterate that. Then kind of like this conceptual, see the picture and reiterate it. Does one size fit all? Everyone is different, like how we eat and what we can eat and how we can assimilate certain kind of foods. I admit there. But in many other respects, we're all alike. In that certain rules apply to everybody, and if we can live by these certain rules, then 98% of our problems will go away. So they're like 10 commandments of health. One idea giving you 10 commandments of health. So what if we can look at it that way, saying, wow, I just got to do this one thing and get into the perfect environment. How would that sound? Would that be a lot easier? Would that give you some hope? Okay, one time in writing my book and sharing these ideas with my brother, my younger brother, and he said, I don't want to hear this, but I want to hear your one idea. Just tell me one thing that I have to do. It was like he can only entertain one idea. So I thought, And then I wrote about that in my book, which was the value of breathing. Something we should be doing even this moment. Just relax and then exhale and take a bigger breath. And if we're like this, try breathing in as deep as you can. Now, sit up straight. See, that's like 20% more room in your lungs. So just having your posture taller naturally over time will give you greater elasticity in your lungs, in the cavity, to naturally have greater aspirations of this life-giving air. So day by day, so many things are going on, we forget to breathe in a relaxing way. So I was giving my brother this one idea of breathing, but that's just one thing, because water makes a difference and sunshine too. Find it very easy that the lack of oxygen at a cellular level is a major cause of dis-ease in the body, even cancer. So could it be that by getting more oxygen into the body, that would help us to fight our cancer? Yes, it is, but it's only a part of it. In this book, Ezekiel, in the 47th chapter, this is, for instance, if we're not doing this, because this is the future and the past, but it's also the future of healing, and the doctor that we're seeing, the naturopath, because I'm going to show you naturopaths that quote this book an awful lot. They have a foundation for their thinking, and when you combine it with this is the foundation, then the end result and their recommendations I think is wiser. It's talking about a tree and it's talking about fruit. Actually, there would be for the meat and the leaves for the medicine. That's Ezekiel 47. So that would tell me that, for instance, the leaves of the tree, in other words, the herbs, would be for healing. So in other words, that's something that we want to incorporate into our lifestyle and our recovery program. So I believe with God's help on this track, we could put an immediate stop to that. And I'm going to show you there's some things that work immediately in that way. I'm looking at one of them right there, that's clay, and how to use clay. Well, I'm not going to be like the salesman that wind you up before they tell you. And carbon, I got some homemade carbon there. I got some homemade probiotics. This is my yogurt I just made today. So it has the fat for the thin. So while I'm eating in between, I got yogurt, and the number one food for almost everybody is avocado. So the chemotherapy hasn't worked. This other system of trying to convince the body to do something differently, maybe it's not working, maybe it is working. But in the meanwhile, we can do all of this. Okay, so here it is. I think the number one reason why people get sick is because they're out of that. Get into the perfect environment, then that would be easy, because the bad environment is where the problem comes in. Can we agree on that? Good and bad, right and wrong. There's a way that would produce health, and there would be a way that wouldn't. There would be a natural and an unnatural, something that's foreign and unforeign to the body. The perfect environment. So imagine having there's man in the garden. So imagine man in the beginning. So if we can go back to the beginning, I think there's answers there. So now, the first thing that man receives is the breath of life, right? And every 5 seconds we're breathing. This is automatically, it's just like a law. Our Creator's looking after that, and somehow we just breathe instinctively, but we can breathe better. That's why we should have a string on our finger. Remember the string? I'll put it on right now. I got an elastic. Every time I see this elastic, I'm going to breathe out. Forget all the exercises of breathing it, because that's too much work. Too much you're on the go all day long. You see that, you see that on your blow out. Now, what I did was I just emptied the stagnant material in the lower part of my lungs. Empty that. And when I breathe in, it invites aspiration to the entire entire cavity, right? So, okay, so we talked about that. So that is the number one fuel for it. We're going to look at this, and I'm going to bring the help of the doctors. I know you want their advice and some science, and we're going to bring up some actual photos of. So now we're going to take this on a microscopic scale, and we're going to look at the cell. We're going to look at the human cell. And we're going to call this an environment. So here's environment number 1, environment number 2. Okay, so imagine, if I can explain it this way. So man put into a garden, a paradise garden, where all their needs were met. They would still work a garden and have access to, according to Genesis 1:29 from Genesis, man was given a diet. So could this diet be related to their health? Because it said it was very good. It was pronounced good. Now Genesis 3:18, we see a revised diet, which indicates the sweat of thy brow. In some translations talks about the herb or the green of the field, that would be your strength. So there was some wisdom in this. So this was the original diet, and this was the revised diet, Genesis 3:18. So you should eat the plants of the field, and plants. You should eat the herb of the field. So Genesis 3:19 says, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. And bread's usually made from grains, right? I think the bread is going to play a significant role too, this idea of bread. And in Genesis 9, we see a permissible diet. Man's giving permission to eat animals, while we see that the earth would be, all the vegetation would have been wiped out according to that account. I'm just watching some videos of the guy that's, he's on the junk food diet with the cheeseburgers and stuff, but he's doing the intermittent fasting. He's got this 18-hour window of nothing, no eating, and showing amazing results. It was like there's still the white flour, but he was still getting unbelievable results. Something like there was so much in that fasting, less than the feeding time. The feeding time, like the body could, we'll eat anything, I guess. Like on the Back to the Future, there's a movie where the scientists put everything into the carburetor on the top. It ate anything. And our bodies are so magnificent that it would almost eat anything. But you got to give it time to clean up. So just that one indication showed me that fasting was so big. The ones who ate nothing got results, but if you nibbled here and there, you're only hungry and you shut down this massive healing thing, mechanism. So whenever you fast, you fast. So, and apparently exercising, hard exercise is equivalent to a lot of the same benefits by fasting. So if we are thin like this, I just went for a really long walk, longer than I did for a while, in the sunshine, working up a sweat. Man, in the beginning, now imagine man's in the perfect environment, and now when they're kicked out of the garden, they're put into a different garden. Still in a garden, but the soil is now stubborn, and they have to work it harder. It's requiring effort and sweat. If that makes sense, think about it. It was for man's rehabilitation. So now, so if you're working in the sunshine and you're having to toil and do all that, you're going to get your vitamin D, which scientists are saying sunshine does 30 different functions, or vitamin D does 30 different functions. But the sun itself does many different functions. When the sun comes out, everyone's cheerful, and the birds sing, and we know how much that does. The plants grow better, right? And so now imagine the sunshine out there. Without that sunshine, if you're not getting sunshine, and then you start to suffer from the lack of vitamin D, which proven is very useful in cancer, but you didn't get enough vitamin D, and so then you go to the doctor and then they give you something foreign to the body, when really what it was needed was more of what is good. There's man in the garden, the sun's coming down, he has to exercise for food. While he's going to be exercising, he's going to be sweating in that process, and then he's going to want water, because when you start to do all these functions, then the body uses the water and it evaporates water. And I saw a video the other day, I'm going to start to dig them up for you soon, where these references as fast as I can, but you can agree with me on this one, that water is so important, that if we're not having enough water, we can malfunction, get a disease, and if we go to the doctor and he says, well, you need something, and he doesn't remind you, have you been getting enough exercise in the open sun, your feet in the dirt, drinking good water, sleeping good at night? Okay, so let's write that down. So, rest. Because a lot of us are overworked. Our bodies are overworked. We're stressing ourselves out too much. When the sun is up there high noon, and we're down here working in the garden at the highest point, that's the midday, when you would be out there working, and as the sun goes down, you have gathered in the food of the day, you would have had a meal, a nice feast, sang some songs in worship, and then went off to bed, and then the next day. So man has a clock. So now they're supposed to be asleep at 9 p.m. and then up at whatever, maybe whatever time you know, so your body feels rested. Don't stress it out, especially right now. You want to just get as much sleep as you can, but might be good to start slowing down at 8 p.m. And so you're not looking at the screens, you're meditating, maybe you have a candle in the distance, and you're praying, you're quieting your mind. That would have been, because if you go one night without sleep, think how much that's going to be affecting you. Like one night without sleep and you're just bagged. But you can go months without drinking good water and good food and exercise, all that, but one night without sleep, 2 nights in a row, and you can't recover that. So rest is so important. And so we overwork ourselves. So it's like man gets up, they work hard, they rest, they have food, work hard, eat, gather the food, sing, fellowship with each other, work hard, rest at night. Can you see the system, the wisdom in this? Now, this is in an environment where there's no toxins. So down there in the beginning would have been a perfect environment, and later on we can see that because there's the toxins in our environment, now there's something going on, there's a malfunction. We need to talk about definitely some real interesting ideas about some healing on a big level, so you can experience something overnight. In 8 hours of carbon, it's so rapid. If you can actually sweat out a quart of water and replace that water in one night, can you imagine that? Now you think, where is your immune system? This interstitial fluid, the fluid that surrounds your cells. It's a water system. The other day, my car, lack of water to keep the engine cool. So you can imagine if I went there, and he said, well, the problem was that you needed a fan. We had to blow an extra fan, one in the front, one in the top, to cool the engine another way. It wouldn't make sense. It was like, no, there's a water system in there to cool, to work, a transmission line for fluids to come in and out and moving toxins, and it's quite an amazing system, because here it is. If you sweat and you test that, it has pretty much the same chemical composition as your urine. And in that body water, you will find all the toxins that are in the environment. Many of the toxins that are in the environment are now outside of your body in that sweat. So if you have a sweat, you sweat really good. Like, now how can you, maybe it's on the exercise bike, maybe you don't have a lot of calories in you because you want to keep those calories rather than burn them off. You can get into some hot water, and that would soothe the kidneys, open the pores, elimination for the skin, the largest organ. A hot bath, just Google benefits of a hot bath. If you do it to the point where you can check your temperature, you're bringing your temperature up. You're inducing a fever, which is a friend, because it fights viruses that only live at a certain temperature. So when I would sweat, if I could drink at least a quart of water and then not wake up in the middle of the night to go to the washroom, because I used to do a lot of sweating, I remember that. And if I tried to drink that kind of water before the bed, I would be up all night. So what that tells me is I replaced 1 quart of body water, 1 quart of dirty water went out, and 1 quart of fresh water went in. So it welcomed that drink of water by sweating. These kind of things could be pretty much universal, that we're supposed to be getting our sunshine, oxygen, our water, rest, exercise. Like if man was in the garden, he would be just running this cycle of having to be out there working, sweating, building up a thirst, having water by the day, then come lunchtime, no lunch, no water with the meals, because that diminishes the flow of saliva to be mingled with the food, chewing it really well. The stomach, you don't want to dilute those juices. So there would have been enough water in the live fruits and vegetables, and mingled with some cooked Very likely so back then even. But probably before the fall of man, definitely it was because he was bathed in light. I think they were on a high fruit diet. Because there was no cancer, you weren't going to feed cancer by too much sugar, which I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to let the expert talk to you about the sugar. But also the word here, teamwork. Because it says, where two or more are gathered in my name, there will I be in the midst of you. So I see that having a team is important to help us get honest, help us to be more like the boxer. He can't win that race, that match, the Olympian. He doesn't win the race without the coach. There's somebody there to prompt them along the way. And that's why what you really need now is a caregiver to just kind of say, try and have a sip of water. Here's your green juice. Here's the clay water. No, it's time for your rest. I'll see you at 3:30. You got a clay massage going in. The sweat's at 5. But the last meal of the day is at 8. And then we're going to go for a walk. And all these things, and keep you on that. Sunshine's out, so let's get out in the sunshine. And help you along the way. So yeah, the biggest thing right now is, you got cancer, you have to have a couple helpers. At least one. 2 people, 3 people is better. Because one would be out there bringing the grass juice. One would be out there, the sheets are going to have to be changed regularly. Your bedding, your pillow, all these things to really have a hygienic environment. Someone's juicing up something. Someone's preparing a high-fat meal. We need at least one helper. Got to have one helper. 2 is better. And if I was there, I would help you. I would say, yeah, we would need 2 or 3 helpers, and then pretty much you can guarantee. Now, okay, say we're really advanced in our dysfunction, then we're going to have to take some drastic measures. But I can tell you a story about myself, where after 7 years, my leg got worse and worse and worse. I thought they were going to amputate it. Eventually I was saying to my friend at the office, I think they're going to have to cut off my leg because, I don't know, it's black and blue and purple and yellow, scaly and ripply, the skin is all flaking, there's a lump in the middle, it's like super bruised, all the hair fell out. The doctor said, he didn't know what to do. The doctor said, I think maybe the pants is rubbing the hair off the leg, and I thought, my oh my, what about the other leg? And then he said, I'm not sure what I could prescribe you for that. But what he could have did, he could have just at least touched it. He could have at least grabbed my leg and just said, wow, this really needs some love and care. He could have just started doing this and tapping it like that. And that would have started this is simple activity going on in the body to start stimulating, kickstarting the lymphatic system. So, because the man from the booths, I met a man who put the carbon on, and one day, it was like unbelievable. And then he used this only hot and cold a few times, and it was enough to stimulate all that activity, and it was a miracle. I looked at my leg, it was pink. The only thing different was there's no hair. I just want to emphasize, it was 7 years of build-up, and in one night, just one night, when that bandage was taken off, there was the most amazing, wow. And then, a couple days later, the hot and cold therapy was done within 20 minutes, and a week later, one more session. And that's all it took to fix my leg. That's the miracle. That's God's methods of healing. Yeah, so I guess I'm talking about carbon now, then maybe that's the miracle. Because of all the toxins coming into our environment, and there's all these different chemicals, and now they have the spike protein. Let me see, something for spike protein is pine needle tea. This is what I have made right here, this pine needle. It's a syrup, so I made the tea, and then I just slow evaporation. I made a lot, so I don't have to be making tea all the time. Does it have to be rocket science to know that carbon actually draws out poison? We know it's in every water filtration system, gas masks, industry, they use it for polishing up all kinds of things. And so your teeth get cleaner with carbon, and so carbon can be taken internally too. In this case, I knew I could save the day with the carbon. And also think about every clinic in the world has carbon, activated carbon, on hand for people who are poisoned for whatever reason, whether it's suicidal medication overdoses, street drugs, accident cleaners that they could have swallowed, who knows. Carbon is used because carbon absorbs the poisons, not maybe every time. Now, you know, you can do the experiment. You can put poison in your water, make it dirty. We just gave some swamp water. Take something out of the ground, dirty, pour it through the carbon. It'll clean. Same as inside the body. The carbon cleans. So if so if you got the carbon, imagine if you had chemotherapy or whatever actually caused the cancer, which could have been the radiation from the electrical wires running through your apartment building. Who knows? Whatever reasons, I'm gonna introduce you to some. I got a list of potential causes, but okay. So now the body, either way, it's toxic inside. So when you put this poison in, just like my leg, it only took 1 day. It was actually one 8-hour bandage, and 2 hot and cold sessions using the buckets of water. But for 7 years, I noticed it worse and worse and worse. It got to be like a limp. You know, whenever you turn on the camera, of course, the mosquitoes are going to come. So I was like really worried. I didn't know if it was cancerous or whatever, but I just saw this. It was horrible looking. It was this big, and the skin was ripply. It was ripply like that. A lump in the middle. You could see the skin was. I mean, the muscles were ripply. It was just like the muscle was very gnarly, and the skin was flaky and yellow and black and blue and purple and red. Look at it like it really got hit, like I got hit by a baseball bat. But yet it started with something small, and it went bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I can only know that it was a lack of circulation. Maybe I was missing a vein inside there. And so that's an amazing story. One night, I thought they were just saying, man, Mary, they're going to have to telling my friend they're going to have to cut off my leg. And it's just like, meanwhile, I wanted to open a health clinic way back then. I thought someday I'll have a health clinic, and someday I will, I pray. But I didn't know enough to put on a poultice. I mean, I read about a poultice a couple times in books earlier, but I still didn't have the wherewithal to just put one on my leg. It just didn't click. Just like it's not going to click in your brain until you let it click in your brain. Yeah, I had to put on one of these bandages too, because carbon just loves the poisons it's exposed to, and it eats them up. And if it's in your body, then you can say goodbye to them and say hello to perfect health. And the story where I talked about the man that wore the bandage for 1 night, 8 hours, the bandage had such an odor. The place was filled, the whole apartment was filled with odor. The upper medical suite that I was using, only because that carbon festered the fumes into the bedding. And it's just, carbon is very powerful. Be expecting a miracle. This is God's miracle. This is his system. All these toxins are the offense. And yeah, so I just drew something on the paper. I'm gonna add that in here to make it more clear, I pray, this idea. So I'm saying that, okay, so now, say you're walking into a health food store and you're sick, and you say, well, I want to feed my cells, and you look, and there's what are you know, some say this, you don't even know. But if the guy's correct in working to help you at the store, he would say, well, ma'am, on this side of the store, we have our carbon and our clay, and a few herbs that also help the body to purge the toxins. You see, we might not know on this side of the feeding side what we can get in, but we know for sure half of the problem is the cells are dirty, if that makes sense. So carbon pulls out toxins. Now the cells can breathe and they don't malfunction. The cells have clean water, so now they can breathe and they don't malfunction. And that's the signal. They're this toxic, and that's why, and so the oxygen can't be taken in at a cellular level, and that's why they're duplicating. It's not like something's going on, the genes of your parents, no. Cells simply are not meeting these simple ideas of sunshine, water, rest, exercise, move the fluids, all of that. Now when we're sick, okay, let's bring up a sweat, we have to work even harder to expel those toxins. And employing these gifts of nature like carbon and clay. It's not normal to drink carbon. They didn't have to drink carbon back then, or put clay in their diet back then, but they weren't living on this end of reality where, okay, it makes sense to use carbon, clay, and also irrigating the plumbing. The lower bowels was just simply running water through this. You clean your sink. I just wash my sink out. I just like to shine up the sink. But how much more the plumbing? And if you actually smell the odor of that comes in that water, and sometimes it actually encourages a pretty good movement, I think, wow, that would have stayed in there the whole day. It would have been like, who knows? And so, wow, what a wonder is to get those poisons, because the body's striving to put those poisons out. So I'm in the hot shower, working the skin, working the kidneys, everything like that, and then actually jump onto that enema bag. And so lots of naturopaths are recommending that as the first line of defense, cleaning the bowels. So I would say, yeah, to wrap the body in carbon, maybe wrap a few limbs in carbon, wrap here in carbon, get the, first you add the water, a little bit of psyllium ground up, and you make it just a bit so it makes a nice paste. You put that paste on a towel, and then you wrap the towel, you just kind of lie into it, and you wrap it like this. And then the plastic. Okay. Imagine if we were in the perfect environment. It would be like, okay, we're back in the beginning where everything was perfect, the world was perfect without toxins, right? Toxins came later as man progressed in history. But in the beginning, he had the breath of life every 5 seconds. He's going to be working in the garden immediately. Probably he was invited. Adam, I would imagine, he said, the creator says, have some food. Adam goes, wow, that tastes really good. So yeah, but you're going to have to work for it. He takes him into the garden. Adam works up a sweat. I'm speaking hypothetically, if that's a word. You get the idea, right? So he's out there, and he's good because he's going to be doing this thing in the garden, circulating. So he's going to have to replenish his minerals and the enzymes. This is the spark of life. The minerals comes from the greens. Flesh doesn't have these minerals loose. They're not organic. The animal got them first. So you imagine now he's working out in the outdoors. He's working up a sweat. Sun's beating down on him. And then he says, "Hey, can I have some water?" And he's learning, wow, some water. But it's not going to be like a toilsome. In the Garden of Eden, it was a very easy, right? And then, but when he was kicked out of the garden, it got tougher. But so, yeah, the work should be pleasing because this is what we're made of. We're in the sunshine. We're getting our vitamin D. They're saying it causes, lack of that causes like 30 different ailments. Well, basically, sunshine is everything. Like the plants, it's part of who we are. And in this process, we're working up a sweat. Genesis 3:19 says, by the sweat of your brow shall be your strength, right? And the greens of the field in verse 18, by the bread, the grains, that was unperverted grains. And then so you work hard in the garden, and then you're not there nibbling. No, that was the sin. You gather the food, and you bring it to the table, and you invite your friends. And a few times a day, you shared meals. That was the deal. Morning, noon, and the evening could have been smaller, something food with the worship hour. But it was small, and the children would need more. And so we're going to talk about the meal times, the intermittent fasting here, which is really a design in the beginning. Going to come back more to this later. But so this is imagine how this was. You didn't have the economic stress. You can sing at night, all these things in the beginning. That was perfect. Also the fabrics. We didn't have the fabrics. Okay, so, but over here, now can you imagine this is the way the world is today. So if you wonder why you have cancer, if the doctor didn't say, well, first, we have to adjust any poisons that are in your body. Let's use the carbon and clean up the environment of the body. Are you drinking water? Are you getting enough air? Right? Because if you're, this is the world. Okay, now this is going to look at the world, depleted soils, chemicals, the greedy emergence of the earth. They're only concerned about their dollar. Come on, we all know that. You got to read the label. So the food is bad. The education system, we're not told what we need. We're not really educated that way. And so our medical system, when I they did not give me a hug. There was no compassion there. It was really a careless system. They could care less. Oh yeah, there's a lot of science in many ways, and blessings too. I'm not going to deny the blessings. But so if you think of the world, it's stress-filled. People have bad eating habits. So inside, our own guts are rotting because we're eating too much. We're not feeding our own microbiomes, all these like the wrong stuff for the inside, bacteria, whatever, negative emotions. We could be dehydration. You can see the pollutants. 5G towers coming out. Also clean electric. This is a big one. Wires running through your home. Our bodies, because we're not digesting our own food, is putrefying in our own body. There's a problem. The viruses and man-made chemicals, these nanotechnologies. Here's more. Funguses, parasites, mold, different kinds of plastics, metals, GMOs. You see nutritionally depleted soils, bodies. Think about the cookware sometimes. Expelling food. Overeating. This is the biggest one here. Man's overeating habits. And so this is to say, so if you say to the doctor, doctor, I don't feel good, he should say, well, maybe because this is going in, and as a result, you're sick. You see? So now how do you get all of this out? Because we're not in the perfect world, this has happened. Okay, so now when you are sick, here's what happens. The awareness to basically have a big enough reason why. We don't have a cause in motion. Thus we do it because. We have to know why. And the willingness and the patience and stamina and all that it's going to take with the support and the coaching. And sometimes you have to give your will up to a program, people outside of yourself. They push you, like the coach pushing the Olympian. And definitely a protocol. That has to be decided, so you have a schedule and you have someone to keep you on that. Very hard exercise. Hard exercise. The carbon, inside and out, is a big one too. Okay, I had to recharge my battery. Silly me. Okay, to guarantee it, what I see more than anything else is always the main thing. Animal products gotta go if you're fighting cancer. Just gotta go. There's too much evidence that otherwise, that juicing. Now, you might say, well, my mother died, and she was juicing. Well, just maybe not enough. There's many factors that come into play, because like I'm going to say here. See? There's many, many factors that come into play. But what I want to introduce to you is one thing that sucks them all up. This is so amazing. One thing that sucks them all up. Made in the image of God, right? The spark of life. But what's going on here? He allows all this. He gives us the perfect environment, but man moves us. Okay, So our sickness, let's see, the sickness is designed because God knows man's stubborn hearts, and that it would be a way to bring people back. And even when our loving Savior walked the earth, I gotta have these extra glasses on to read. He was, when he walked the earth, he healed people physically, but really he was after their souls. You know, it had to be deeper. There had to be something more than that. It was all about this spiritual healing. There was a certain element, spiritual element as well. So sometimes we're physically, because spiritually maybe he doesn't have our attention enough. Here then, quickly what I'm saying is the part about calling down the fire from heaven and holding our Father to his promises, because he said, you shall lay hands on the sick and the sick shall be made well. So these are promises. But okay, so back here then, I'm going to stay with this for a moment. The program, starving and feeding. Well, everything has to be properly fed, and if it was properly fed, then everything would be okay. But in the case of when the cells start to go crazy, okay, if the cells are going crazy, then yeah, these do feed on sugars, high sugars, and so that creates a real chaos in the body to do battle with that. So the best thing to do is clean up this environment. You pull all of this out of there using the carbon. Now, where do we talk about carbon? Yeah, this is the big one. This carbon here just can't be emphasized enough. Yeah, this is the big one. This is the huge. It's all about this, because this will absorb this whole page. Pretty much all of that. That's the miracle of carbon. So now the nerves are settled and we can sleep. Right? So the carbon will do wonders on itself. But imagine if we were working very hard out there and sweating. That's why you need a coach. And I was amazing the last few days. At least I was out there and I was saying, Kip, come on, you got to do this. But it seemed more natural, but I was sweating. I was working all that up, right? Scrubbing the skin. There's all kinds of cheese in those pores that aren't dumping. So you can scrub the skin with a dry brush, get in a 3-hour-long soak. Massage moves the lymphatic system. It's going to be stagnant, and massage is relatively affordable. And so let's say, and then you use clay or ozone cream on that too. And this is the big one too. This is the big one. If you want to beat cancer, here's how you do it. I'm not kidding you. You can't say, well, I want to see what my naturopath says. No. Natural reasoning should say, okay, the toxins end up, they go in deliciously on one end, and they're on the tail end of the other end, they're not very delicious. That's the poison on this end, the bowels. So it's okay to flush them out. Why? Because look. You think you want to leave this up to your body? We don't want to encourage a sweat? Look at this. Look. And when we sweat, we put all this stuff out. This goes out of our body. And what do? We drink water. I mean, real water. Then we don't have this chaos going on. Real water. And food that is rich and alive. That's how we heal disease. but we've moved. Our whole bodies, we've moved. So that's why we want to, that's why this is not natural, running water up your butt. But neither is getting cancer natural. Why? Because the body can't breathe this oxygen. It can't absorb the nutrients. Why? It's dirty. You use the carbon and it cleans the water out of the bowels. It cleans the waters around the cells. Water everywhere. The carbon goes, you can use carbon enemas, carbon wraps, carbon drinks. Now this is sweating. We're talking about sweating. This is the number one thing we got to do in our recovery is sweat. So carbon and then sweating. Infrared. This can also, we can do a steam sweat too. 1, 2. So this is the difference between life and death. Big tumors and no tumors. Why? Because a tumor, this is the tumor. It's sitting in your body because it has nowhere else to go. But then when we create a new organ on the outside via the bandage, it's a wet application. This is a wet application. And when the body has a wet application, an inert, empty, like clay, or it could be porridge, oatmeal. The one thing about clay and carbon, they're magnetic. They're negatively charged and activated, and they draw magnetically. And so the brain says, hey, we have a new organ, we have a new tumor right here, baby. We have a new one on the outside. We create a tumor right here. And then the poisons all come out here. Because we're making the poultice. Did I mention the poultice on here somewhere? Well, if it's not on there, we should have it on there twice. But yeah, so that's basically, let's just keep going through this. Feeding times, because it needs to be fasting, and so definitely this is where the healing comes in. The healing comes in fasting. The healing does not come in on feeding. Feed will keep you from getting too thin. I had to go get my reading glasses. Okay, so let me recap here. Basically, what we're going to need to recover from the cancer to get our guarantee is this reaching out. We're going to talk about that. Basically, we have to touch the garment of the Almighty. We're going to talk about a little bit of program here, but staying focused. Spark here to support the most important thing, right? To really push you to sweat. We must sweat. We must sweat. Sweating is the key. Sweating is the key. Dripping the water out of me. Okay, if we got cancer, any disease for that matter, we've got to starve and feed. Okay. So looking at the program now that we're not in a real world anymore, starving, that means like low on the glycemic kind of like foods, and basically no food. Should be no eating at all. Only juices, green juices, nut milks, pumpkin seed milk, homemade milks, coconut milk, and animal products. Like I say, they're out. Fasting, definitely fasting. So when you eat time meals, structured meals, well-prepared meals. We can talk more about that. Then we fast. And the grass juice is going to be big too. Sprouts, enzymes, that's what we need. And the probiotics, so that's your own sauerkraut. You can just, you know how to make that on YouTube there. You can always find out anything. Yeah, so this is going to be maybe you have to get a cord of wood and chop a cord of wood some way to get in a contest. Some kind of, you got to sweat. You can't stop. No, you rust, you die. Scrub the skin. You got to help. That's why this is your caregiver comes in here, and obviously Wi-Fi and all this occurrence. Yeah, so basically the big one here is the carbon wraps and the sweating. and rehydration of green juice. Skin scrub is big. Enema is really big. The massages are going to be big. Infrared sweating. These are all prayer, more prayer. Big, big stuff. Okay. So, more about the program then. Praying long and hard for the blessing. Sometimes, yeah, we're not praying like we can. What's most important thing is you got to hire that a team, accept the help. You got to take the help. You got cancer. I don't feel good about seeing you not have a team around you helping you to keep a schedule. What schedule? Move out the toxins. Just to move out the toxins till recovery time. So this is like radical moving and stretching. And then hopefully in an upcoming video, maybe day by day, we can share some of these. Keep going with this. That's that hard exercise. And breathing, that's just like structured breathing. Remember, wherever you see the elastic on your finger, blow out. Yeah, you got to work up that sweat, create that thirst. I think watermelon might be good too. I don't know. Maybe that's probably might give you more alkaline than you are feeding your tumors. But you definitely, when you fast, you might have to have some calories fasting. But that's where the milk will come in. Using fasting, bringing the milk in, and fasting with avocados if you want. Say. Yeah, move the body again. More, not enough of that in the sunshine. Be out in nature too. You got to sleep. Maybe get out of that apartment. And always the water, sipping with a little bit of salt in there, a little bit of that pink salt. That's going to be key, rehydrating. And avoid, you have to spend time on all of this program, so you got to watch where you're spending your time. Yeah, so we got to consider our priorities. If it's like saying, okay, I'm going to spend time here now, but have no time later because I'm not going to be around. No, program first. Oh, I keep running out of space on my phone. I have to delete videos. I have to upload. Well, I have to keep this video short because I keep running out of space here on my phone, having to delete things to keep ahead. So yeah, we can come back to it in another video soon. So you can get an idea. Maybe you can take a snapshot of this on your own video, stop the camera and take a look at some of these ideas. Okay, yeah, so what's really going to be big, it's just, well, the plant-based diet. I think that animals are kind of holding a bit of a curse. Like a lot of people, I can see evidence that it's, you got no fiber, which you need, the bacteria needs the fiber, and it's got, yeah, let's just leave it at that for now. I'd say the plant-based is the way to go. But most important thing is having these periods of fasting, whatever they're going to be, between your meals, set your meals, and then nothing in between. So little fasts, and maybe a daily fast, but you have to make that schedule. And the hot and cold showers, obviously you're doing that, you're saying that, but turn up the heat and bring it down. Yeah, however. This is going to be a big one. Sweeping the bowels, that can't be emphasized enough. Well, I did it, and man, that's, when you see what comes out of there, in a regular movement, you see, but, so that's because we saw. Why are we doing that? Because of this unnatural world. It turned into cancer, and more than anything else, of course we want to sweep the bowels. Okay. I'm going to run out of space, so I'm going to keep it fast. Open the other channels, because, so your lungs, through the breathing exercises, and also the skin and the liver, and that's also a patch you can put on the liver. And the magnets, are you still sleeping on the magnets? The North Clarity Up. If someone's listening that doesn't know about that, send me a line, I can tell you about that. Your devices, close the room at night, turn off the Wi-Fi. Cotton sheets, cotton bedding, clothing. Plastic is chemicals. Plastic also interrupts the natural rhythm of the heart. So you have to have natural fabrics. If you're sleeping in bed and you got your window closed all night, wow, you're rebreathing a lot of air, so you have to have an open air. It's too bad there's a lot of pollution in the air too. So if you have an air filter in your own room and you're filtering the air that comes in by your bed, and has a negative ions, adding the negative ions to there. Even an oxygen concentrator would be better. I have one. You can borrow it or you can buy one. Somebody listening needs to buy an oxygen concentrator. You can, that way, in the room only. So in other words, the machine's outside of the room, but you run the hose into the room. And this is big too. Ozone water, the oils on the body, steam. The steam tent, we'll cover it in the next video, but you're basically steaming for 10 minutes and then you go into the cold shower. Hyperbaric oxygen. And yeah, really these, just can't say enough about this heavy workout. You gotta go to the Olympics on this one now. Let's do the Olympic sign. All right. Yeah, the heavy metal cleanse, parasite cleanse, and all these. So this is like herbs and bandages inside and outs. The grass juice greens, this is going to be your blood transfusion here. The blood of the plant and the blood of the human beings are almost exactly the same for one except one molecule. And so I would say that, yeah, completely fasting, but flaxseed and avocado. So that's like a broom and some fast to keep you alive with the juices. And that's all you need. Doesn't matter how thin you get, you must have structured fasting. Yeah, and if you can sleep grounded, put your foot to the ground, right, with a copper wire, that kind of thing. Grounding is big right now, so working bare feet in the garden. So yeah, to reiterate, the sweat, the big ones, the carbon wraps, avoid any more chemicals in this. So basically it's fasting with juice and milks for the fat to keep you a little heavier. Avoid all chemicals with the sweating and the carbon, and the body will heal. But you gotta stop the pollution. You gotta stop the tap going in. That's this page. The carbon will mop it up. The enemas will mop it up. Fasting will help your body to clean at a cellular level. And infrared light and some of these things, but yeah, so the big one is that carbon and the fasting and the enemas and the sweating. Gotta sweat, you gotta exercise. Okay, so that's covering this page here. Let's talk again, a little heavier, a little bit more detail on the next video.